Hi, welcome to IS Factors Radar, and I am Arjun R. Shankar. In the world of international relations, we often come across when countries come together. We call it the multipolar world, or countries come together to form various type of groups. We have the G20, we have the BRICS, we have the ASEAN, BIMSTEC, and the Shanghai Corporation. The list goes on. But have you ever heard about a grouping called as CRINC? Yes, you heard it right, CRINC. Or what do you mean by the concept of axis of upheaval? What is this axis of upheaval? CRINC is an informal grouping. There is no such formal grouping of countries called as CRINC. It is China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. It's a loose, informal arrangement of countries coming together. And what is the concept of axis of upheaval? Some countries are all coming together. So why do you think the CRINC countries are coming together? What is their ultimate agenda? And what do they want? And how does India come into this picture? Is India a supporter of CRINC? And how is the United States of America responding to all of it? So in this radar, we'll have to decode all these issues in detail. So what is the equation and how does the equation really work? I'll explain. The biggest idea of CRINC is to destabilize United States of America. Putting it very simple, they do not like the control that the US is taking, US is exerting on the global world and the global world order. They do not like United States of America, they dislike them. So this is the ultimate purpose of all these countries. So we all know that we are leading in a world, so they want a multipolar world where the Western countries have lesser importance. They have lesser control. So that means it's a big blow to the United States of America as well as the Western countries. So take it right, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea want to create, all of these countries have problem with the United States of America on both the sides. And let's take the example of, and to see how this equation work and also understand this loose network is actually a network where they actually interact with each other. They have trade relations, they have military relations, political supporting, everything. It's mutual support either ways, but it's an informal thing. Let's take an example of how China works. China is targeting and trying to curtail the domination of United States of America across the world order. China does that. And how about Russia? Russia is fighting in Ukraine and it is supporting China and it is leaning on Iran and North Korea for support. Look at the case of Iran. Iran is supporting Russia with drones. Iran is giving drones to Russia. It is also giving oil to China. It is supporting North Korea. And look at North Korea. It is also supporting Russia in the war. And it is always targeting the United States of America against its domination, and it also work against the sanctions that US is putting on North Korea. So looking at all the perspective, it's very clear that all these countries have a strong distaste and dislike towards the United States of America. So that is why CRINC or the axis of upheaval is coming here. So what does the word mean upheaval? Because they are against, it is actually like countries coming together, like we say that's an upheaval. They are against the majority or the domination of the United States of America, USA. That is the concept of axis of upheaval. Now the biggest problem for the Americans is previously they could easily target each of them individually. Like they could easily target Russia, they could target the Chinese people, they could target the North Koreans. But the problem is now, since they have formed a loose network, it is very difficult for them to target separately. They are all in one single line. And look at the biggest instruments which USA put towards was always the concept of sanctions. Previously, US could easily sanction a country, put sanctions on Russia, put sanctions on North Korea, like they usually do. But since, again, this country is on a loose network, if one country is on sanction, the other countries will immediately come forward to support it. So the impact of sanctions has become less. Ultimately, when you put a sanction, you expect an outcome to happen. Okay, this is the impact that we need to create. But that impact is not created since all of them are connected. Look at the concept of military pressure. You could not militarily tackle one country. If you target a country militarily, other countries will immediately come up. And what about the concept of NATO? North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the Western countries, the NATO sees this axis of upheaval as the biggest enemy. It sees as a biggest threat. So the CRINC are maintaining this fight, individual, invisible fight against United Nations majority attitude. And now the key question is, where is India here? Where does India standing and what is India's role in this? What role is India playing in it? We'll decode the Indian angle right now. India has always been great friends with all these countries. Right from after our independence, we can see we were always non-aligned to a lot of countries. We are supporters of US, we also are supporters of Russia. So at this point of time, when CRINC or axis of upheaval is in place, we should see India as a balancing position. We are part of, India is definitely part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization and also part of BRICS, where you have China, Russia, and India is also part of many organizations like Quad. India is a partner to United States of America. It's also partnering with Western countries, Japan. We have the Quad. So one side you have BRICS, SCO, and one side we have Quad. So we are balancing. We are buying oil from Russia. We are maintaining normalized relation with China in the borders after the post-Galvan issue, the Denchok issue. We are keeping a very normalized situation with China in terms of our border, in terms of our trade. We are normalizing with China, and we are also taking support from United States of America because it gives us technology, it gives us defense, it also gives us investments. So we'll buy oil and we'll actually engage with US, and at the same time we'll also engage with Russia. So India plays a balancing act. And India plays a very important role, and it is making sure that it is not a part of the axis of upheaval, because we are taking that balanced position. So this is where Indian situation and Indian current positioning comes in this direction. So we've already had an idea about the axis of upheaval. So curiously, we need to know, is it the first time that we are having an axis of upheaval, the term? So the term that we are discussing, the axis of upheaval, was a term actually coined in 2024 in Foreign Affairs by Andrea Kendall Taylor and Richard Fontaine. So it's a new usage. Before it, let's actually track and go back to the history and rewind it to 2002, during the time of the American President George W. Bush. We had something else called as the axis of evil. So what exactly was this axis of evil? Back then it was IIN, which meant Iran, Iraq, and North Korea, because US did not like these countries. And obviously by the reason, according to the US, they say these are the countries which are creating a breeding ground for terrorism. They're promoting terrorism and they're creating weapons of mass destruction, or WMD. So obviously the reason why US did not like these countries. And in 2003, the US invasion on Iraq was also justified by this. And take a look at the countries Iran and North Korea. How many times these countries were put on sanctions by the United States? How many sanctions in history? We know whenever you look at when you read the global news about Iran and North Korea, and with the perspective of US, you always see sanctions in the first place. So this was the axis of evil. And back in 2009, there was another concept called, the same concept called axis of upheaval. So not the thing that we discussed now called CRINC. In 2009, the axis of upheaval was coined by a person called Neil Ferguson. He coined it not in the context of the United States of America. It is entirely from a different perspective. This time, it has nothing to do with the United States of America, or these countries are not defying or challenging the hegemony of US. No, it is something very different. The context here is the financial crisis, the world financial crisis that happened in 2009. The problem is, there were some countries, take an example of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and even some of the smaller countries in the Middle East. They were facing, due to the financial crisis, they were facing unrest, military unrest, economic collapse, weak governments in these countries. So what was so alarming? When countries are facing humongous financial crisis, military unrest, or weak government, these countries, especially Pakistan, Afghanistan, and some countries of the Middle East, will get more prone to terrorism. Since they don't have a strong government, these countries will become breeding grounds of terrorism. They will promote more terrorism and they will create weapons of mass destruction, and indirectly when these things, terrorism happens, nuclear weapons are created, they have a tendency to automatically, indirectly and directly target United States of America in the long run. So these countries were called as the axis of upheaval back in 2009. So it's completely different. So anyway, now you have an idea about what is the axis of upheaval and the crink. I'll come up with another interesting topic for the next time, Radar. Until then, it's Arjun R. Shankar for IS Factor.